Welcome to the Institute of All Intelligent Life. My name is Alan Kiesler. We're continuing our class in extraterrestrial spirituality. So I've been asked to just give a little introduction to myself because some people don't know about me or about my background. So I've been asked before the class to just say that I have a PhD from the University of California in Berkeley. And I am a professor now at the Institute of All Intelligent Life. I had taught in Berkeley and in Lahore at Forman College, and I had taught in Hong Kong at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. I've retired from academia and I'm teaching in my own institute because most universities in the world today won't allow you to teach about extraterrestrial life, but to speak of extraterrestrial spirituality. So we're going to take up from where we've left off in this course. We are talking about God in our hearts from an extraterrestrial source. People often ask me, so what are the extraterrestrials saying about God? What do extraterrestrials believe about God? So, as I've said frequently, in my experience, extraterrestrials all believe in a source of everything, one supreme source. They understand it differently, describe it differently, believe in different things about it. But it's quite unusual on our planet. The way here, there are a lot of people who say they don't believe in God, they call themselves atheists. So this is a result of a rather unusual history that we've had, where the controllers of our planet have concealed the truth from us intentionally. So a lot of people don't know about God. But generally on other planets people are well aware that there must be, not that there is, but that there must be one single source of everything. So what we're talking about today are the thought adjusters, or God in the heart, God in our heart, or the supersoul. There is a fragment of God, or an expansion of God, an aspect of God within our hearts. And I have gotten this term, thought adjuster, because they are our conscience. They give us guidance. The thought adjusters is in the plural, because although God is only one, God is present in everyone's heart. So that presence of God in everyone's heart is also in a way individualized. And so the thought adjusters are that aspect of God who is present in our hearts. And as I explained in the last class, although it's a little difficult, not a little difficult, it's extremely difficult for us to understand. In fact, it is described that this is the greatest mystery of all mysteries, how the infinite God, Allah, the original source of everything, could also be present in our hearts. But He is. We know that from many sources. And we all can directly experience that presence of God in our heart. We all do experience it, although different people understand it to different degrees and can hear it to different degrees, but that voice of God is speaking to us all the time. Or, at least if we're listening and we're able to hear, then He will be speaking all the time and giving us guidance. But if we don't listen, then I don't think He bothers to give guidance all the time. No use, but He keeps trying to give us some guidance. So the thought adjuster is the term used in the Urantia book, which I'll just take a minute to explain this too, because some new people may not know what the Urantia book is who are hearing this. The Urantia book was a book that was received between 1925 and 1935 by the group of human beings living in Chicago from various extraterrestrial personalities, some of whom live in this universe and some of whom are from other universes, either material or spiritual universes, And the paper that we're reading from now, actually, I had not explained that in the last class, is from a personality called a solitary messenger. And this is a group of beings. There are maybe 1 trillion, there's a huge number of them. I can't remember the exact number. Maybe 60 trillion, I can't remember exactly, but a huge number of this group of beings. There's a huge number of beings in this category, and they all come from one of the same type of spheres, spiritual spheres, as I described in the last class. This one is called Solitarington, I think, and that one was Divinington, because the thought adjusters come from the planet of Divinington, and the solitary messengers come from the planet of, or the universe, this huge sphere, spiritual sphere, named Solitarington. Anyway, so this solitary messenger, who has given this paper that we're reading today, and we read the last time, and we may be reading in the future also. We'll see how much we get through today, but is a solitary messenger from that spiritual sphere where the solitary messengers come from. Okay, so I'm going to keep reading now a few passages, and then I'll make some comments. We had been reading how the thought adjusters, or the super soul within our heart, God within our heart, our conscience, is a real being, is the divinity, but it's very mysterious how that relationship happens. What is the relationship between Allah, the original source of everything, and these thought adjusters, and what is the relationship of the thought adjusters to us? That's very, very mysterious. But we do know that as we progress in our own spiritual development, it means we more and more learn how to do the will of God. We can hear the voice of God within us, or we can understand the teachings of God in scriptures. And as we start just automatically or spontaneously doing what God wants us to do, we and the thought adjuster, the mystery monitor in our heart, become more and more united until finally it becomes a complete totality of oneness, and we become a new creation. The thought adjuster with us in our heart, and we, the soul, you can say, we become united into one new creation. And not quite a creation, a new reality, a new being, because the thought adjuster is never created. The thought adjusters are eternal. But so that's what we had been reading up till now in this paper. So so I'm going to continue reading. When thought adjusters return to Allah, that is, they come from the sacred sphere of Divinington, so when they go back to the spiritual world after they complete their work with us, and we become united and we go back to the spiritual world, or for some other reason they may go back, that's what we're reading about. They go back, the thought adjusters. When thought adjusters return to Allah, they go back to the realm of supposed origin, Divinington. And probably as a part of this experience, there is actual contact with Allah's paradise personality, as well as with the specialized manifestation of Allah's divinity, which is reported to be situated on this secret sphere. So, in other words, the thought adjusters are only one aspect of Allah that has a certain function. On this sphere called Divinington, which is the home, the origin of the thought adjusters, there is also one specialized manifestation of Allah, who is, I guess we could say, the ruler of that sphere of Divinington. So I'm not going to read all of this paper, but just a few things that this sphere of Divinington is very, very secret and mysterious. And we can't go there, you and I can't go there, nor can even this solitary messenger, who is a very high level of spiritual being, eternally from the spiritual world, not ever immortal, although they come here. But this solitary messenger is saying that even we can hardly understand anything about Divinington. We know less about Divinington than the other spheres of paradise. So then he writes, or beings of high spiritual orders receive only 3 divine injunctions. In other words, they don't need very many rules or laws, only 3. The first one is always to show adequate respect for the experience and endowments of their seniors and superiors. Number 2, always to be considerate of the limitations and inexperience of their juniors and subordinates. And 3, never to attempt a landing on the shores of Divinington. So we should never try to go to Divinington. So now he explains a little about it. I have often reflected that it would be quite useless for me to go to Divinington. I probably should be unable to see any resident beings, except such as the personalized adjusters, and I have seen them elsewhere. I am very sure there is nothing on Divinington of real value or profit to me, nothing essential to my growth and development, or I should not have been forbidden to go there. So we have a characteristic, we're curious. Something may not be for our benefit, but if we learn about it, we want to go there. Right? Children are sometimes like that too. So that's a characteristic that human beings have often. So he's helping us understand here that there's no value. Even he doesn't try to go there, because he understands if there were any value in him going there, he would have been allowed to go there. So I'm going to read on, since we can learn little or nothing of the origin, the nature and origin of adjusters from Divinington, we are compelled to gather information from 1,001 different sources, and it is necessary to assemble, associate, and correlate this accumulated data in order that such knowledge may be informative. So in other words, what he's telling us here about the thought adjusters and where they've come from, that is a result of doing a lot of research, accumulating a lot of data. All right, I'm reading on. The valor and wisdom exhibited by thought adjusters suggest that they have undergone a training of tremendous scope and range. Since they are not personalities, this training must be imparted in the educational institutions of Divinington. The unique personalized adjusters, this word came before, so I'll explain it in a second. The unique personalized adjusters no doubt constitute the personnel of the adjuster training schools of Divinington. So the personalized adjusters, there are, as I recall now, 7 different groups of thought adjusters. One of them is personalized adjusters. The others, as I explained in the last class, are not personal, they're pre-personal, which I frankly admit I don't really understand what exactly that means, but they are a type of being who doesn't have personality the way we do. But they're pre-personal, meaning that they become personalized in some different ways. One is when Allah simply gives the order that this adjuster should become personalized. Another is when the adjuster merges with us, merges with the mortal soul of an evolving being of space and time, which is our ultimate goal. Then that adjuster becomes personalized, because that adjuster becomes merged with us, and we have personality, so we become a reality which has everything of both of us. So our personality, our free will, that is bestowed upon the adjuster, and the adjuster's infinity or infinitude is granted to us. So that's our goal. That's our end, is that we become that sort of personality. So there are some types of personalized adjusters. I just described two. I don't remember if there are others. There may be, but those are the two that I remember now. So those personalized adjusters, he is explaining, are the teachers of the other thought adjusters on Divinity. That must be the way it is anyway. He says he doesn't really know, but that's what they have no doubt must be the case. Then I'm reading on. We really know very little about the non-personalized adjusters. We only contact and communicate with the personalized order. They are christened on Divinington and are always known by name and not by number. The Urantia book talks about a lot of different groups of beings, and some of them are just identified by number, but these adjusters are not. The personalized adjusters are permanently domiciled on Divinington. That sacred sphere is their home. They go out from that abode only by the will of Allah. Very few are found in the domains of the local universes, but larger members are present in the central universe. So the local universes mean the material universes, the central universe means the spiritual universe. So there are millions of trillions of, I don't know how many universes in the central universe, spiritual spheres, glowing spheres, which, as I've mentioned before, they're very real. I've seen them. Although I didn't get to go into any of them, I saw them from a distance. So the personalized adjusters are active there. But the pre-personal adjusters, the ones that we have with us in our hearts, they are throughout the local universes, also the material universes. In fact, they're everywhere. Wherever at least there is a intelligent being, they are there with them. They're with us in our hearts. All right, let me continue a little bit more. This is on the nature and the presence of adjusters. To say that a thought adjuster is divine is merely to recognize the nature of origin. It is highly probable that such purity of divinity embraces the essence of the potential of all attributes of deity which can be contained within such a fragment of the absolute essence of the universal presence of the eternal and infinite Allah. So these beings, the thought adjusters, they are divinity. They are almost equal to Allah. Maybe a slight difference. It appears there from this description here that they are infinite in a different way that Allah is infinite. They are only a tiny fragment of Allah. But since Allah is infinite, therefore, in fact, that's we're just going to read a little bit more. Let me not get ahead of myself. I'll read on. The actual source of the adjuster must be infinite. And before fusion with the immortal soul of an evolving mortal, the reality of the adjuster must border on absoluteness. Adjusters are not absolutes in the universal sense, in the deity sense, but they are probably true absolutes within the potentialities of their fragmented nature. So again, I have to repeat that this is a mystery, very difficult for us to even begin to understand. But no doubt the thought adjusters are infinite, absolute, but in a different way than Allah is infinite and absolute. They are fragmented because they are individual beings who are present. In fact, each individual thought adjuster gets different experience from being with or in the heart of or the accompanying a certain individual soul. So they all are individuals also. They are qualified as to universality, but not as to nature. In extensiveness they are limited, but in intensiveness of meaning, value, and fact, they are absolute. For this reason we sometimes denominate the divine gifts, that is the divine gift is the thought adjuster, as the qualified absolute fragments of Allah. No adjuster, we're reading on, no adjuster has ever been disloyal to Allah. The lower orders of personal creatures may sometimes have to contend with disloyal fellows, but never the adjusters. They are supreme and infallible in their supernal sphere of creature ministry and universe function. So the thought adjusters, as we would probably expect from what we've understood, but evidently they have freedom also to, they could be disloyal if they wanted to, but they never are. They are like God, they are virtually God. But, he says here, the lower orders, we sometimes have to contend with disloyal fellows. There are persons like us who are sometimes disloyal to Allah, and then that creates a lot of trouble for us. But the thought adjusters never have this problem of having fellows, meaning other thought adjusters, who become disloyal. They never are. Non-personalized adjusters are visible only to personalized adjusters. So that means those adjusters who have not yet become personalized, we can't see them. In fact, nobody can see them except the personalized adjusters. My order, the solitary messengers, so this person who's writing this paper or giving us his paper is a solitary messenger, so his order, that is, he and the other solitary messengers, can detect the presence of adjusters by means of spiritual reactive phenomena. And even seraphim, that's an order of angels, can sometimes discern the spirit luminosity of supposed association with the presence of monitors in the material minds of men. But none of us are able actually to discern the real presence of adjusters, not unless they have been personalized, albeit their natures are perceivable in union with the fused personalities of the ascending mortals from the evolutionary worlds. The universal invisibility of the adjusters is strongly suggestive of their high and exclusive divine origin and nature. So the thought adjusters are invisible. At least they're totally invisible in their non-personalized status. They only become visible to some beings when they become fused with a mortal soul and thereby become personalized. That's one way they become personalized. So, it's very, very interesting that even the solitary messengers, like the author of this paper, can't see them. But they can detect their presence by means of some spirit luminosity. They can somehow, and even seraphim, that's a high order of angels, they can sometimes discern the spirit luminosity which are associated with the thought adjusters. This is quite amazing information, isn't it? But I'm just going to keep reading a little bit more, because even if it's a little beyond our understanding, I get the feeling that, and this was my experience too, after I started reading this book, first my mind was just boggling. There's so much information, it's almost unbelievable, about the universes and different types of beings in them. But as you just hear it, gradually, if you just listen, then gradually the ideas start making sense and they start becoming clearer. So that's why I'm doing this. I'm just reading, and so if you just listen, it will gradually make sense to you. Now this next paragraph is very interesting. There is a characteristic light, a spirit luminosity, which accompanies this divine presence, that is, the thought adjuster. And this characteristic spirit luminosity has generally become associated with the thought adjusters, and in different places they are described in different ways. In the universe of Nebadon, that is our universe, this paradise luminosity is widespreadly known as the pilot light. It's interesting because there are guides, so they're pilots, so it's a pilot light that's associated with them. On Uversa is the capital of our super universe. On Uversa it is called the light of life. On Urantia, that is our planet Earth, this phenomenon has sometimes been referred to as that, quote, true light which lights every man who comes into the world. So every one of us gets this light, this true light in our hearts as a guide. and we may follow that guidance better or not so well. That's our freedom. All right, then one more sentence. To all beings who have attained Allah, the personalized thought adjusters are visible. So although we can't see them now, they will become visible once we reach paradise in the presence of the Supreme Allah. Now, I'm going to just take a second here to comment again, the same thing. It's very, very difficult for us to appreciate this reality, the thought adjuster. Very difficult for us to understand it. It's a little bit frustrating to me when I try to understand it, and especially when I try to talk about it and try to explain it to other people, because it's different than things that we've been taught in the past. It's not really different, but it's something that's we're unfamiliar with such an idea. We have a little bit of familiarity with it. We have that idea, but all of this information, and especially these ideas that God in our heart is somehow not fully God, because it's a fragment of God, this is a little bit hard for me to accept even. But gradually, as we keep reading and hearing this, it becomes more acceptable and making sense. But I just want to stress this. In fact, that's what the next sentence says. Can you really realize the true significance of the adjuster's indwelling? Do you really fathom what it means to have an absolute fragment of the absolute and infinite deity, Allah, indwelling and fusing with your finite mortal natures? When mortal man fuses with an actual fragment of the existential cause of the total cosmos, no limit can ever be placed upon the destiny of such an unprecedented and unimaginable partnership. In eternity, man will be discovering not only the infinity of the objective deity, but also the unending potentiality of the subjective fragment of this same God. Always will the adjuster be revealing to the mortal personality the wonder of God, and never can this supernal revelation come to an end, for the adjuster is of God and as God to mortal man. All right, so I'm going to not read any more now. I'm just going to make one brief comment on this, what I just read, and then we will go to the questions. So this is, again, this is amazing. For me, this is incredible. But somehow, an actual, absolute part of the infinite deity, the absolute Allah, is present within our hearts. It's really, or He is really with us. And can we really understand that? How God is really within our hearts and becomes one with us. Not Allah. We don't become one with Allah ever, because Allah is always infinite and the source of everything, and we can never be the source of everything. Even if we were to become infinite, we would never become the original source of everything. So we don't merge or fuse with Allah, but we do fuse with an actual fragment of Allah, this thought adjuster, an actual fragment of the cause of everything. So when this fusion happens, when we become one with the thought adjuster, no limit can ever be placed upon the destiny of this incredible partnership. So when we actually become one with God in our heart, when we fuse with our adjuster, nobody can imagine what will be the result of that. But that will happen. That is our destiny. That is our goal, that we will become merged with our thought adjuster. We will become one with that spark of, or that not spark, that fragment of divinity in our heart. And that is just the beginning. From then on, we take on a whole new type of reality, a whole new type of identity. We become a new type of reality. We become, what can we say, man and God in one. Of course, the Urantia book uses the word man rather than human being or man or woman because it was written 1925 to 35, almost 100 years ago, when this gender-neutral language was not in place. But it means that we, human beings, man or woman, will actually become unendingly serving in a new way, serving Allah in a new way, once we come to that perfected state of becoming one with the thought adjuster. And that will never end. We can't really understand this, but as we hear about it, gradually, little by little, we can understand more. Okay, I'm going to go to comments. Let's see. Sayyid Bakas Hamdani. Salam, Professor Allen. What do you mean by thought adjusters? Can you please define this term? The thought adjusters was the subject of the last class, so if you missed that, the thought adjuster is God in our hearts, a fragment of Allah, the original source of everything. The God expands himself in these fragmental parts of him. They are God. For us, they are God. The infinite, all-knowing, anyway, we can't understand how they are God and at the same time being limited within our hearts, but that is what the thought adjuster is. It is the presence of God within our hearts. And we've just been studying a lot about it the last class and in this one. Okay, Sohail Faruqi, Assalamu alaikum, sir. My question is, what is the difference between spiritual universe and material universe? Means, how is existence of spiritual universe, how it looks like? Is one of these is virtual or both real? Very good question. The spiritual universes, not spiritual universe, we can call it the central universe, it's sometimes called, but there are millions, unlimited numbers. We can't count how many spiritual universes there are. And they are real. They are absolutely real, eternal in the past, eternal in the future, and absolutely real. This world that we're living in, the material universe, is more like a virtual reality. Yes, it's not ultimately real the way the spiritual world is. It is temporary. At least it's temporary in the past. That is, there was a time when it didn't exist and then it came into being. At least that's my understanding. I could be wrong on that. But at least our universe came into existence at a certain time. Billions of years ago, but long time ago, much longer than we can even comprehend. But it did come into being. It was created. Therefore, it's not absolute the way the spiritual universe is. And the other main difference, which I talked about in a few classes ago, is time. We have time in this universe, which means that things deteriorate here. By the influence of time, I can call it the second law of thermodynamics by scientists, everything runs down, everything deteriorates. So that's all the material universes, as far as I understand, they deteriorate. That's the effect of time. But the spiritual universes are outside of time. That is, they're not influenced by this phenomenon of degradation and deterioration, things growing old and dying. The spiritual world, everything is eternal. The spiritual universes, nothing is created and nothing is destroyed. Everything there is eternal. The only thing that comes into them that didn't exist before, as far as I know, is things that come from the material universes. That is, when we evolve and ascend to the spiritual world, then we become residents of the spiritual universes also. But otherwise, everything there is eternally there and always will be there. Very important point, though, is because it's outside of time doesn't mean that things don't happen. We usually think if something is outside of time, nothing's happening there. That's not true. It's outside of time, but things are happening there. So that's a brief description of the difference between material and spiritual universes. And I like your question very much. Is one of these virtual or are both real? Of course, it depends on what you mean by that. But I think that we can describe the material universes, at least to some extent, a certain aspect or parts of the material universes are really virtual realities. This world that we're living in is really a virtual reality. It's not really real. But the spiritual universes are, and ever will be, and always have been, really real. Okay, Rafi Latif. This is our belief that only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is beyond all time and frames. He was there before anything and would be there when nothing would exist. In Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions about those people who will enter Jannah. They will remain there forever after. Khalidin afiha. My question is, if humans are mortal, then what part or form of humans will survive, dwell in Jannah for eternity? Okay, so I think there's more than one issue here. The first one that I want to clear up is that this is a misunderstanding if you think that nothing but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala existed before time. There is an entire spiritual universe that exists eternally, not only Allah. And that universe is never created. That is always there. That is Allah's residence, and there are many universes. Allah lives in the one paradise at the center of all universes, spiritual and material universes. But the spiritual universes and all of their residents are also eternal. In fact, if there was a time when Allah was alone, then how could He be Allah? How could He be the master? Master means there must be servants. So there never was a time when Allah did not have servants. But for us, because of our limited brain and our limitation within time, we can't think about something outside of time. So if there's a description that Allah is the only thing that existed from eternity, then that must be a concession to us to try to help us understand Allah's uniqueness. All right, so that was a point I wanted to clear up first. So now, in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions about people who will enter Jannah, heaven, and live there forever. My question is, if humans are mortal, then what part or form of humans will survive, dwell in Jannah for eternity? Well, that part is the soul. The soul is eternal. The body, of course, dies, but the soul is eternal. So that spiritual soul, that will live eternally in the paradise of Allah forever. There's one other issue which it's very controversial, so maybe I've had mentioned it before, but I won't bring it up. Let me just see if there are other questions. Okay, we have a question here in Urdu, which I have to say this class is in English, and I really don't know if I will read all of these Urdu questions because but anyway, I'll try to see this one. I can speak Urdu quite easily, but it's much harder for me to read Urdu, but I'll do the best I can here. Zindagi jahan chahe, jab chahe, shuru ho sakti hai, aur jahan chahe, jab chahe, khatam ho sakti hai. अजब बात तो ये है कि जिंदगी से पहले भी जिंदगी थी और जिंदगी के बाद भी जिंदगी रहेगी. हम अपनी पैदाइश से अपनी मौत तक तकरीबन 60 साल के अरसे में मंजिलों का जिक्र करते हैं, मंजिलों का तयन करते हैं और मंजिलों की तलाश करते हैं, ये समझते हुए कि यही तलाश और यही हासिल है ही कुल कायनात है. हालांकि हमारे आने से पहले बेशुमार लोग अपनी मंजिलों को पा भी चुके. इन लोगों ने अपनी अपनी मेहनतों, काविशों और तलाश के झंडे गाड़ दिए और जो मकामात वो लोग हासिल कर गए, अब किसी कीमत पर भी वो मकामात हम हासिल नहीं कर पाते. So this is going on and on. I'm sorry I can't take time to read all this Urdu because there are some people also who don't know Urdu listening to these classes, so I request you in the future, please do not ask these Urdu questions in this class. There is an Urdu class every Saturday morning, 8 a.m. in California time, 9 p.m. Saturday evening in Pakistan time, so you can ask your Urdu questions there. But since I've read this, as much as I've read, I will try to answer in English. So I don't really quite understand that you say, Zindagi jahan chahe, jab chahe, shuru ho sakti hai. I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. I understand the words, that life, whenever and wherever it wants to, can begin. I'm not sure who that life is, that zindagi is that you're talking about, who is free to begin and end, as you go on to say, whenever it wants. That is not zindagi's choice. It's not the choice of life. That's the choice of Allah, if He wants to make something begin or end. So, you said that अजब की बात है, जिंदगी से पहले भी जिंदगी थी और जिंदगी के बाद भी जिंदगी रहेगी. I don't understand what's ajab about that. That seems perfectly normal and easy and natural. So then, from our birth to death, for almost 60 years, मंजिलों के जिक्र करते हैं, मंजिलों का तयीन करते हैं और मंजिलों की तलाश करते हैं, ये समझते हुए कि यही तलाश और यही हासिल ही कुल कायनात है. Again, I don't really understand that. I'm sorry. I mean, I understand the words again, but what you mean, that this is the entire universe, I wouldn't limit the universe to say it's only these, searching for these manzils, these levels or stations. I'm sorry, I'm just going to leave this question now. But if you ask it again on Saturday evening, Pakistan time, then I'll try to go into it a little bit more. But please, I request everyone, don't ask such long questions, especially or don't ask any Urdu questions in this English class. Thank you. All right, so now we have a English question that's kind of long too, but that's okay. Sir, I think Sohail Faruqi is asking, thought adjuster are not a separate thing, but are actual fact, that actual human, which are created internally directly from Nur of Allah. Then Allah took promise from all of us at a time of His oneness, and then we all slept. All this happened in Alim Amr, where Qun Kalima of Allah did this. After that universe is created, then first jinn came into being, and after many lakhs, man, Adam, in the form of a body is created, and those sleeping souls, adjusters, come in our bodies with their fixed time. This solar adjuster is other than our conscious. Your comment? No, I don't agree with this, not what I understand from this. You say that the adjuster, the thought adjuster, are not a separate thing, but are actual fact, that actual human. No, the thought adjuster is not the us, it is not the human being. We, the human being, the soul, we are limited. The thought adjuster is unlimited. Although in a sense there's sort of a limitation, but really the thought adjuster is infinite, knows everything practically. And so that thought adjuster is definitely not us. Thought adjuster is the spirit within us, the Spirit of God within us. And we are a limited consciousness, The thought adjuster is virtually unlimited consciousness, so God in us and we become gradually closer and closer as you and I make more and more choices to serve God rather than, neglecting or going against even God's service. And ultimately we become one with that God in our heart. But we never become one with Allah. That's impossible. All right, rough as far as I know, I may be wrong there, but as far as I've ever understood, we can never become Allah. But we can become totally one with the thought adjuster. Okay, Rafi Latif, sir, whatever you're reading out from your Rancha book is mentioned in Quran again and again. Seeing with Nur of Allah, moving under guidance of the Nur of Allah. God-fearing and God-conscious people are privileged by this quality. The best thing which people of Jannah will experience is meeting with Allah in person. Subhanallah, what a beautiful privilege. Yes, this is wonderful. I've been amazed myself, as people have told me, because I didn't really study the Quran that closely to realize how much of what I'm reading about the thought adjuster and is indicated at least in the Quran. Of course, not in such detail as what we're reading about, but the Nur of Allah, moving under the guidance of the Nur of Allah, that is the thought adjuster. It would appear that that's a description in the Quran of the thought adjuster. Yes, so thank you very much for pointing that out. And I like this also very much, that we will eventually meet Allah in person. That's what is taught. I don't know if the Quran so clearly states that, but in the Hadith it is very clearly stated that ultimately the people of Jannah will, in fact, I've told this story before. The Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, explained that when we Muslims, when we pure-hearted beings come to be with him in Jannah, then he will ask us, are you fully satisfied? And we will say yes. And then he'll ask again, are you sure? We will say, yes, we're sure. And then finally he'll say, are you really sure? There's nothing else you want? And then we will say, well, you know better than we do. Is there something else we should be wanting? And he will say, don't you want to see Allah? And then we will say yes. So if we